Hello all, and welcome to Meanwhile in the West, my weekly program where I read some letters to the editor in my local newspaper, The West Australian, and lecture the letter writers on various issues. Okay, first letter. It was the GG's call, 12th of March 2014. Jeff Taylor points to one consequence of the High Court's decision to call the new Senate election, a problem with the WA Senate poll, letters 10th to the 3rd. There is more. Electors in WA will have come and gone in the interval between polls. Those coming from other states and enrolling here will have had 2 votes for the Senate. Those departing to reside in other states will have had no vote at all. After the original poll, counting revealed a result with close margins. As there was neither evidence nor accusation of wrongdoing during the count, the best interpretation of the poll is for the original result to stand. This was never a matter for opinion by the High Court. Administrative action by the Governor-General, who has the responsibility for appointments of governments, would have been more appropriate. Terence Smith, Waterford. Now, there's several problems with what you just said there, Mr. Smith. Firstly, it wasn't the High Court that actually offered an opinion on this. It was the members of the High Court who were sitting as the Court of Disputed Returns. Now, this is a special court that rules on electoral matters, particularly when there is a dispute, when the returns from the election are disputed. This is enshrined with our Constitution, and so sitting that way is in accordance with the law. So the main problem with your letter is you're suggesting that you're not happy with the way that things were done, even though it was done completely within the way that it's specified in the Constitution. Now, the reason why it's so important that we stick to that is that if we do not keep to the letter of the Constitution, this would allow room for various political and non-political civil servants, judges, etc., to alter and influence election results. So the fact that it was run in accordance with that and you don't like the outcome really shouldn't make much of a difference. Now, the idea that the Governor-General should have just made a decision is appalling. We actually try and avoid that as best as possible because the Governor-General is just one person, and their opinion, no matter how measured they're trying to be, is certainly open to bias. I mean, look at the Whitman dismissal. Now, the second thing is that, yes, just because there was no evidence or accusation of wrongdoing doesn't mean that the count wasn't invalid. The accusation was that several, 1,300 ballots were lost, that yes, almost certainly this was not done maliciously by anybody, that nobody had done it deliberately, but because the count was so close, those votes could likely have changed the outcome. In that situation, to allow the result to stand is hardly going to be in keeping with the voters' intentions. So the only thing that could be done would be to hold another thing. Now, yes, there's an unfortunate consequence that those people who've moved states, essentially some will gain an extra vote and some will lose a vote as a result of that. However, as I said, this is within our Constitution. This is what has to happen. And so we stick to the rule of law. If you don't like it, change the Constitution. Don't just write in bloody letters to the editor. Okay, next. When cash won't do, 14th of March 2014. I went to a major wholesale outlet to buy $2,000 worth of goods. When they said they didn't accept cash, I left the goods on the counter and went to their opposition business, where they accepted cash. Strange how a major business did not accept Australian currency, cash. I thought it was illegal for retailers to demand payment in a specific way. Robert Utengut-Bogerd, Beachborough. Now, firstly, you say you went to a wholesale outlet and then you talk about illegal for retailers. Now, there is a difference between wholesalers and retailers that I hope you noticed. In particular, it isn't illegal for businesses to accept only limited payment options as long as they're accepting Australian dollars. As far as I understand, that as long as they're accepting our currency in whatever form it happens to be, that's completely fine. Now, secondly, they're hardly demanding payment. And thirdly, yeah, they weren't a retailer, they were a wholesaler. And what kind of person walks around with $2,000 in cash and then gets uppity that other businesses won't accept it? You know, if this was a house, we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars, would you expect people to walk in and just pay cash? And lastly, as somebody who's worked in customer service, if you're the kind of fucking idiot who would get $2,000 worth of stuff, plonk it on the counter, then get uppity, and then just walk out and leave it on the counter, what, you think it's the employee's fault? If you went to a major wholesale outlet, I doubt the person behind the counter is the owner or manager or CEO of the business, and therefore that poor sod has had to put up with your poor behaviour all because you like to walk around with $2,000 in cash. Idiot. Facebook fines, 14th of March 2014. It's time the government banned party invitations via Facebook with a minimum fine of $25,000 for those who don't pay for damage or to pay for police time should they attend. Teen sorry for party mayhem, 10th the 3rd. Enough is enough. Peter J. Arathun, Beachborough. Oh yeah. Yeah. Ban party invitations via Facebook. Yeah, if you did that, this is so simplistic, I barely feel like I need to respond to it. If you ban it on Facebook, people will use other websites. If you ban it on all websites, people will use SMS. If you ban it like that, then people will fall back on the old habit of sending, I don't know, party invitations by phone call or maybe by mail. And then what are you going to do? Just ban parties. Is that your answer? And a minimum fine of $25,000 for those who don't pay damage. If it's a criminal action, then there is already plenty within the criminal law for the prosecution of this stuff. If it's civil damage that you're talking about, then there's already plenty of civil law to deal with it. There's no need for anything else. And enough is enough. You numpty. Home is my castle, 14th of March 2014. It is encouraging to see our state government's renewed interest in the offence of burglary. Unfortunately, the main thrust appears to involve proposals for mandatory sentencing. I have attempted to convince police and authorities that they are tackling this problem from the wrong perspective. Principally, our homes can be made much more difficult to invade. While I don't suggest private citizens be allowed to install security measures such as electric fencing, I see no reason for someone who is familiar with bylaws and regulations to do so for us. It is possible and economically practical to make one's home impenetrable to unlawful intrusion. All it takes is the political will to allow us to do so. This would remove WA's reputation of having Australia's highest rate of home invasion. Peter Buzzard, Maddington. Oh my god, you are exactly the kind of crank that I read these letters for. You want to put up electric fencing around your house. Sorry, you want to pay somebody else to put up electric fencing around your house, and you want other people to do the same. Firstly, there are so many problems with this. Number one, if a small number of people do that, you're hardly going to stop burglaries because people will just burgle other places. Secondly, even if you did make your house completely impenetrable to home invasion, which it's interesting that you've put home invasion along with burglary because they're actually quite different things, and you stop people getting in, do you magically think that crime wouldn't happen? When they made it mandatory for immobilisers to be fitted in every car sold in WA, do you know what happened? An increase in burglaries. Why would that be? Because the criminals who steal cars knew that they wouldn't be able to hotwire your car, so all they did was break in and steal your keys, which they knew would operate your vehicle. Now, if you put up electric fencing around every house and stopped that kind of burglary, then what criminals would do is they would just mug you when you came out your front door, or they would take your keys and force you to let them into your home and do the home invasion that way. And lastly, I don't know what kind of brain it takes to think that living in a society where there's electric fencing or similar around every house is going to be somehow a better society to live in. And I don't even know that WA has a reputation for having the highest rate of home invasion or burglary. I mean, I really severely doubt that. And even if we did, I doubt that the reality matches our reputation. Peter Buzzard, you are a numpty. Review the law, 15th of March 2014. The law let down Daniel Morecambe. Brett Peter Cowan should never have been allowed out after 2 previous molestation attacks on children. Had that occurred, Daniel Morecambe would be alive today. The law must be changed. A crime like this deserves a life sentence, and I do not mean in a mental institution. Yvette Wallace, Kalamunda. Okay, so this is really actually quite a serious issue. I chose this letter actually as representative of actually lots of letters that are written. So for those who don't know, this guy, Brett Cowan, kidnapped and attempted to molest a teenager called Daniel Morecambe, and ended up murdering him. This happened several years ago and was finally brought to justice. Now, after Brett Cowan was found guilty, it emerged that he'd had previous sexual assaults against children, and people were saying that yes, the law let down this child by letting him out again. Now, here's the serious issue. So let's imagine the situation that the law courts were in. Let's discount for the fact. Let's actually get rid of the idea. I mean, the law couldn't have actually sentenced him to life in jail for sexual assault on a minor, no matter how serious it was. That's not actually a sentencing option. But let's discount that for the time being. Let's imagine it wasn't. Let's imagine the court just had free range. Let's say after his previous convictions, before this. So he's standing before the judge, he's been found guilty, the judge has to decide upon a suitable verdict for him. Okay, and let's suppose that the judge has free rein to impose whatever punishment is, that he thinks is suitable. What he's going to do is determine whether a appropriate punishment. And the problem is he's got to determine whether this guy is, if we imagine every single offender who's had a similar previous offending history, and we look at and we say, well, okay, let's say there's 100 of them. Of that 100, how many are going to go on to kidnap and murder a small child? And the answer is very few. Very, very few. The vast majority of people who've even had the criminal record that he has are not going to go on and do this. And so when he's standing in front of the judge at that point, the judge has got to weigh up what is the likelihood that this guy is going to kidnap and murder a small child. And the likelihood is actually very low. So at that point, it's very hard to make an argument that actually he should be locked up, unless you want all these people to be locked up. Now, there's a number of reasons why I don't believe in having massively harsh punishments. I mean, largely because it is not an effective way of reducing crime in the community, and it is purely for vengeance. So we just like to punish people. It does nothing no good for our society. It actually comes back on us by creating more crime. And so I won't go into that now, but I mean, I think that's a stupid argument. So the problem is that before this guy Brett Cowan had murdered Daniel Morecambe, it was essentially impossible to predict that he would have turned out to be a child murderer. In fact, all of the best predictions would tell you that he wouldn't. We can't distinguish the ones who are going to go on to and from the ones who aren't. Partially because at that point even he doesn't know that he's going to do that at the point of being previously sentenced. And the last point, and this is actually a significant point, which I think is overlooked, is this idea that because he's a danger to the community, he needs to be locked up. Now this is a thing that has become very commonly sort of espoused within a community, that we need to lock people up who are a danger to the community. This is a dangerous approach to take. Why? Because essentially what you're doing is you're saying, because this person is a threat to the community, that is, they are likely to or may go on to commit further crimes, they need to be locked up, that is, punished. Can you see what I'm getting at? So what you're saying is we need to punish a person now for a crime that they are likely or may commit in the future. That is, crimes that they have not yet committed. And this is an incredibly dangerous approach to take in criminal justice. Why? Imagine that you fall within some kind of demographic that would predict that you are likely to become a murderer. Let's just say that the evidence shows that overwhelmingly, whatever demographic, whether you're male, let's say middle-class white men who happen to visit a particular website, drive a particular car, live in a particular area, blah, 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 overwhelmingly likely to go out and commit murder. The logical reasoning would be that we should lock these people up so that they can't commit the murder. But the thing is, if you fall within that category, you have not necessarily done anything wrong yet. It is completely unjustified, in my opinion, to punish people for things that they have not yet done. And so the idea that this guy Brett Cowan should have been locked up forever prior to this, because he subsequently turned out to then murder somebody, is completely wrong-headed. Bit of a serious one. Similar serious one. Feasting behind bars, 17th of March 2014. So, prisoners in WA jails enjoy gourmet food. Gourmet offerings in WA jails, 15th to 16th of the 3rd. Give some of us a hankering for the good old days when authorities dished up boring, monotonous food to avoid giving inmates a better life than the poor outside prison, e.g. those in the workhouse. Perhaps Rob Broadfield could do a few reviews so that we can make up our minds if life of crime has any perks if we get caught. Reese Winterburn, City Beach. Okay, so it's a bit of a joke. Let's get the paper's food critic to review prison food. Now, firstly, there's several issues with this. As somebody pointed out to me when I was working in the criminal justice system, if somebody offered to lock you up in a 5-star hotel, but you weren't allowed to leave your hotel room for the next 10 years, this would still be punishment. And the fact that it was a 5-star hotel with, cable TV, gourmet food, or, room service 24 hours, you would still have lost the most important thing to you, that is your freedom. And that is the basis of our correction system here. The basis of it is that the most important thing to anybody is their personal freedom and autonomy, and we take that away. And having taken that away, we try to give them, well, prisoners in general, some level of decency and dignity within the prison system, recognising that no matter how much gourmet food they may be able to eat, they have still lost their freedom, and that no amount of gourmet food makes up for a loss of freedom. Secondly, the gourmet food that was on offer in WA jails was actually for purchase by the prisoners. So that is, it wasn't given to them for free, they had to buy it. And for most of them, their source of income was their what's called gratuities, which is kind of like wages, except definitely not wages. So the highest rate a few years ago when I was in there, working there, was $7 a day. So 5 or 6 hour work day, and they got paid $7 for that. And out of that, they could buy a whole range of things, including gourmet food, like oysters, say, tinned oysters, not fresh. At slightly inflated prices. Now, why would this make, number one, does this somehow make it better, make it hugely better to be in jail? No, not a single person in jail would tell you that they were happy to be in jail because they got oysters or other gourmet food. Secondly, this is part of good prisons management. Now, if you want to run a prison well, that is, you want to have limited disturbances, you want prisoners to behave themselves, to not attack staff members, etc., etc., then you need prisoners to get perks. Not big perks, but little perks. Things like a tin of oysters. This enables you to take them away. You can offer them incentives, you can take them away as punishments. Secondly, allowing prisoners to work and get paid, even in nominal amounts, and then spend that on things that they can choose, is exactly the kind of things we want prisoners doing when they get out. That is, this is part of their rehabilitation. So lots of prisoners don't actually, on the outside, before they come in, don't really work, get paid, and spend things on their, spend their money on things of their choice. They commit crime, they get money, and they throw the money away on stupid things on things like drugs. So giving them an opportunity to get a little bit of dignity through work at $7 a day, and that was the maximum. Actually, lots of prisoners were on $3 or $4 a day, and then choose it to buy nice things, actually showed them that working life and fitting within what society would think of as being a reasonable routine was actually beneficial. So that maybe when they get out, they think, actually, I could get a job and work and get paid more than $3 a day and buy nice things like, I don't know, tinned oysters, rather than committing crime. So, one, it's good prisons management. Two, it's good rehabilitation. And lastly, your idea about hankering for the good old days when authorities dished up boring, monotonous food to avoid giving inmates a better life than the poor outside prison. The poor outside prison definitely have a better life at the moment than inside prison. And if they didn't, the solution would not be to make jail worse. It would be to improve the lot of the poor outside of prison. Does that make sense? So if the poor people outside of prison are living worse than prisoners, that's a problem. That's the solution, is to improve things for poor people, not to just bring everybody down to that one horrible level. Anyway, that's enough ranting from me, and that's enough ranting for 1 week. I'll see you all next week for another rant.